Hi everyone. I I just realized I lived through something similar to the crisis we are experiencing right now in Bali, Indonesia, about 17 years ago. Um, I'm talking about how a crisis impacts tourism. Okay, so not from the health point of view. This is much bigger and widespread. But in 2002, I was in Bali. I was actually in Lombok, in an island called Gili Travangan. Beautiful island. I had spent already a few weeks there. I lived in Bali and in Indonesia in general for months at the end. Um, and so I was in this island, kind of like little paradise, and a bomb, a bomb was set off in a discotheque in Kuta, Bali. It's a part of Bali where many Australians went to spend time on the beach, and I had been actually, in that disco a few days before. I used to bring people around, and yeah, well, we escaped it. So I left the island and I went to see what happened, and I went to see this disco. There was nothing left. About 90 people died. Most of them were Australians, and and everybody had left. I mean, every single Westerner had left. And at the time, tourism in Bali was, I would say, maybe 90% was Westerners, like Americans, Europeans, Australians. I was the only, white guy around. Literally the only one. I spent after that a couple of weeks in Bali, and in the whole 2 weeks, I've seen one couple of, one Western couple. They probably were lost. So, as I was going around Kuta, those streets were usually full of motorbikes and people and tourists and locals, and it was really empty. Still, the restaurants were open, most of them, and I remember going to one restaurant where I had been very often before, and people recognized me there. And I remember this lady taking my hand and saying and asking me, "When are the tourists coming back?" And well, I didn't know when the tourists were coming back. I wasn't, like the representative of the whole white tourists in the world, so I didn't know. In my heart, I was thinking, well, this is done. Bali is done because, September 11th was a year earlier. This happened. Other things happened. More things were going to happen. I thought that was it for Bali, right? People wouldn't come back. The world is big. Why do you have to go in a dangerous place? Okay, but I was proven wrong. Tourism picked up again, and it actually increased. Now, the parallel with the situation we're living today is that not only tourism will come back, that's something we can take for granted. But, and so I'm not saying anything new or interesting here, but what really struck me in Bali at the time was how things changed after that. So people came back, but they came back differently. And let me tell you the ways this changed, and you can see in your own country if it can apply to you. First of all, Bali before the bomb was a very cheap place to be. I used to pay something around $5-7 a night for beautiful guest houses with breakfast included. The lady would bring me a pancake, I just cooked pancake. They would bring me tea, and it was tea all day. It was just like, for that price, it was like unbelievable. The rooms were beautiful, basic but beautiful, with golden coating on the handmade wood door. I mean, for that price, it was like amazing. Okay, but after that, it changed. Some of these people, some of the locals, learned that you could actually improve your places and charge much more. So some places started charging much more for higher level accommodation. There was a lot of investment from people from outside the country or from people from Java, which is the island where the capital Jakarta is. So a higher end tourism took hold. The parallel here is that as things change, there's an opportunity to change your offering because nothing is moving right now. So maybe it's a good time to reconfigure your offering. Okay, that doesn't mean that in your country higher end tourism will come. That's not the message here. The message is in this moment where there's no tourists, you can change things. Okay, and the trick is to foresee what kind of changes will come, and we're gonna come back to that because some trends are easy to foresee because they were already in place before the COVID-19 crisis. But let's go ahead with Bali. So we had higher end tourism. We had, I saw popping up villas for $1,000 a night. The little villa I was living in costed me $300 a month. And it was just amazing. Okay, just to give you the order of magnitude improvement, which Bali. So higher end tourism. Then Ubud is a place in the middle of. Well, you may hear my voice like cracking a bit. I got emotional when I think about Bali, and Ubud was the cultural and is, I guess, still today, the cultural capital of the country. No beach there, just hills and the mountain in the background. A lot of rice fields and a lot of cultural life, real cultural life, not tourists, not for the tourists, open to the tourists, but these guys are really really deep into their roots, and that's one of the amazing parts of Bali. And a new kind of traveler started coming, which was like a longer term traveler. We started calling them a bit later on digital nomads, which were people like me basically who had a laptop and they were making their business online, and instead of spending their time in an expensive little room in London, they could afford to choose a nice guest house or a nice house in Bali. So this is what you call arbitrage of your money. So you earn hard currency in the West or in rich countries, and you spend it in cheaper ones. And Bali was like amazing for that. So digital nomads started to settle there. I actually haven't left this part. I haven't been back to Bali since then. That's after 2011. Now, these things take a long time, right? The bomb was in 2002, and I think digital nomads started kind of settling down after 2011, because when I was there the last time in 2011, has it been that long? Maybe not, but still, the last time I spent a long time in Bali was in 2011, I think. Whatever, I haven't seen those, but I know that for a fact that now Ubud is full of co-livings, so people were, places where digital nomads live, and the cultural life, that kind of cultural life is really strong there. So yeah, this new kind of tourism, like longer term tourism, that's also interesting for us in other countries today, because the trend for longer term bookings has been going on for a while. I'm going to come back to that too. So what else? Higher end tourism, longer term tourism, and the cheap traveling, the backpack version, is still there, but it feels like the people who stayed in this kind of kept offering $5, $7, $10 a night places, and they just didn't. They belong to a dying species in a way, and they are still trying probably to get their customers from the bus or when they get in the town with the motorbike. While in the meantime, that's another main trend. We started being able booking the same places on Agoda. Agoda is like, belongs to Booking Holdings. It's basically the Booking.com of Asia. I'm sure you can book those places in Booking.com too. But anyway, while we were getting to the place, getting to Gili Travangan or to Ubud or to Kuta, and then started going around looking for a place to stay, looking at the room, looking at the price and deciding, it became after a while obvious that you could just book them online. They were still very cheap, and just have, just get there and get your place. I've done this a lot in Southeast Asia, not in Bali, but in Thailand or Myanmar and many other countries. So that's not the main trend, the booking platforms. Okay, of course, this main trend is actually on the other end now. We won't see the rise of booking platforms. We've seen it already. So now, the Bali after the bump became a different one. So the main message here is things will change, and that's pretty clear to most of us, I guess. They will take a long time to change, and the main trends may not be so apparent today. So the first thing, there are some trends, as I was saying, which were very clear already before, right? So one of them, the one I'm most convinced about, is longer term, so monthly bookings, where people book your apartment or house or villa for a month, 2 or 3. This has been going on for a while already, and it's been accelerated. You've probably seen Airbnb recently putting them more clearly on their own page. Don't mistake this as a kind of like online experiences, something you do because the other things don't work. This is a main trend Airbnb has been seeing for a long time, and actually there's been a section of Airbnb.com/sublets, if I'm not mistaken, which was there. It's been there for a long time. This is a main trend for 2 reasons. First of all, the rise of digital nomads, which are just one little part of people who want to stay a long time. The general rise of flexible living. People are not stuck to their homes and offices anymore, and that's been going on for a while. I've done courses, I've talked about it. Trips has been, since the beginning, a booking platform for digital nomads and tourists, and we removed the digital nomad part because there were no offerings. The hosts hadn't picked up yet on this trend, so there were not enough hosts trying to cater this kind of customer. 3 years ago and then 2 years ago, I went to Chiang Mai. This is in Thailand. It's one of the world hubs for digital nomads. And I went specifically to study what they were doing, how they were living. And I came home with a very clear idea of how big this is going to be. And just to make it, to synthesize the concept, I say that in a few years, more than 50% of our nights will be for longer term bookings over a month. That's, of course, a generalization, but just to give you an idea, I'm pretty convinced about that. First of all, because if somebody books 3 months, it's easy to, it's making the job of many tourists at the same time, in just one go. I've experienced this myself with apartments in Venice, where I was able to convince a few owners to change the business model, and it worked incredibly. But this part, early adoption part is gone now. Everybody will start jumping on this wagon, and we're gonna see an increase of offering and then an increase of demand too, even if the demand is there already. So this main shift is here to stay, and it's gonna get bigger because of the smart working, which has been introduced worldwide now. Many of the forced smart workers won't go back to their offices for many reasons. Okay, some will say, "Why do you have to come back? I'm working perfectly well from home." And some companies will say, "Well, why should I spend all this money in offices when these guys are working so efficiently from home?" Of course, some people won't be efficient, but in general, you know what I mean, right? Some will just not go back. And I've seen this with my eyes. I've seen this 20 years ago the first time. First thing, you are sent home to work, okay? And you say, "Oh, it's so good to be home." and then you say, why the hell am I home? Why don't I go for a month in Canary Islands or Rome or Paris or wherever, or on a villa somewhere, right? So a big chunk of these people will start looking for places to book for a month or longer, and it's just a trend which is accelerating very much. So expect this to stay and to grow. So this is for one of the possible ways that's going to happen. Then another thing, one of the possible things which are going to change and which you may decide to give a try to, right? Another thing, it may seem small, but look, I'm working now. I'm in an apartment. This is not my apartment. I'm renting this apartment for day use because I usually work from, bars, co-workings, outside. I don't go there anymore. These places are shut down. So I don't want to work from home. I want to be quiet. I rented a place. I could have rented an hotel room. I'm renting an apartment now. We call it smart working spaces, and it's basically day use spaces for work. This is going to grow too. Again, is it something new because of COVID-19? No. Already, I think 3 years ago, I've done this the first time. I was in Bangkok. I have, my wife and my kid in the house, and I want to work quietly. Or sometimes I need to do, a webinar or a video. Where can I go? I try to go to co-workings. It's easy to get a desk. It's really hard to get a private space in a co-working where you can sit down and, do a video, right? So I said to myself, why don't I book a hotel room? So I went into agoda.com, and I looked for places for the same day, very, very last minute, and I booked up rooms where I didn't actually sleep. I just stay there. So again, that's a trend. It's probably more a niche than the long term, of course, but again, there are people around the world who need a place for the day or for the week or for the month or for the long term to work from. They use, okay? I'm definitely not the first person in the world to think about this, but I've done it myself, so I'm pretty sure there is this need, and I'm pretty sure this is gonna grow. So again, you have a hotel or you have apartments. Sometimes in very low season, it may make sense to rent them out in this way. It may, or it may not. Again, these are all potential things you could do. So just to go back to the Bali analogy here. So we're gonna come out of this. People will come back. I wouldn't make the mistake of trying to go back to the ways things were before. Exactly, because they won't be the same. Well, you could actually try to go back to exactly the same way as before in a better way, and you could actually be successful. Why not? You've been catering to tourists, you're gonna cater to tourists, okay? This may work, but try to open your eyes on the other things which are gonna change. And I just mentioned a few, and more will come in the next months and years. I'm talking 10 years framework here, okay? You have to start moving now to be ready for the next years. And the last one, of course, let me do this, is the booking platforms. What happened with Airbnb and Booking in these weeks has been, again, that was a trend already in motion, which is loss of trust from the supply side. We've been saying this for a couple of years. It's like OTAs are great, but they have too much power, and this too much power is creating inefficiencies and is creating problems all over. It's just not healthy for an industry like the vacation rental industry to be so much dependent on OTAs. It's just not healthy for anyone. It's healthy only for the OTAs themselves. And now we have platforms which are still in control, and they're going to be in control for a long time, but they lost the trust of the supply side. What will this bring? What will be the result of this? You can keep a market in your hands if you capture the guests. You can keep it in your hands for a long time, because if you have the guests, you can do what you want. But when you reach this kind of distrust from your supply side and you are dependent on your supply side, How long can this last without changing some fundamentals? And that's a question I don't have an answer to, but definitely we've seen a big drop in trust and goodwill towards the OTAs. And we're already seeing a much more enhanced interest in direct bookings, okay? And we as Trips are seeing much more interest in what we are doing. Unfortunately, we are not ready to to provide a solution. Direct bookings today are a much better short-term solution to bring some balance in the market, and we are much more a longer term. But this crisis and I would call it knee-jerk reaction of OTAs towards the guests are accelerating this trend. So whatever we are doing is going to happen sooner than expected. There you are. That's it. Again, see what happened in Bali and probably in other places after crisis. Things are going to change. Let's try to work on, towards the future as it will be, and let's kind of stop looking at what was before. We're not going to go back exactly to what was before. So yeah, I just tried to share this because I think it was relevant. So thank you for listening. Bye.